it's not a completely new programming language. It's Python. There are tools dedicated to Python. There are even like formal verifiers specialized for Python, and those can now be translated to Cardano smart contracts. If you don't only focus on, okay, let's build something new, but maybe also how can we combine the new and the old to leverage the power of all the tooling that we have available already.
OpShin is an alternative smart contract development language for Cardano where you can write your code in Python as opposed to Plutus. And this allows many, many more developers to be able to write smart contracts, because if they're very familiar with Python, which Python is a hugely popular language, you can pick that up, use your existing developer tools and IDEs and anything that you're already using to actually start writing the smart contracts on Cardano. So that's really, really appealing for anyone that is wanting to get into the ecosystem. Now, there is a little bit of a write-up here on developers.cardano.org all about OpShin, and a couple of links and everything, the examples and everything that you need to probably get started. Now, it is also noted here that OpShin is still a work in progress and not recommended for production use at the moment, but it is a really good base to start working on if you're interested in writing smart contracts. Now, they also have a whole bunch of other things here. Let me just pull this up. Now, I found this quite interesting. They have a lot of documentation here about the language, but if you go back down here, they have a lot of supporters for the language at the moment as well. So Inversion here is the main supporter. MuesliSwap are also using it as well, and ADA Finance are also a big sponsor of the platform. I saw a tweet a little bit earlier, not a little bit earlier, about a month or so ago, that announced that they were supporting them financially as well. So it's really cool that they're doing all of this. Now, if you want to find out more about Inversion, they have a little website here that talks all about it. They were actually funded in Fund 8 for a couple of the projects that we're doing with decentralized support for .NET with the Cardano Sharp library. So they're a really good development team, and they started working on the OpShin base as well. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more, you can always join the community, but they also have a account here on Create. It used to be called Takey. I can see why they changed the name, because here at Takey, you kind of assume how to pronounce it, but Create is a little bit more obvious. So I like this one. And it's kind of like a Patreon for the Cardano ecosystem, where you can stake your ADA to this particular account here, and it will, I think on a regular basis, take the ADA out and support the team there. So it's a really cool way of getting in and supporting the projects, providing them with a little bit of ADA, and you get priority support, a patron role on Discord, etc., etc. So it's a really good way to support the development language and see the Cardano ecosystem grow in a different way. Now, in this interview here, I have Niels joining me to talk about the language, why he created, and how easy it is to get started in writing smart contracts in Python. Now, just beware, like I said, it's still early days for this, and I did this interview back in December of 2022. So it's been a few months since then, and it has developed and progressed quite a bit. But let's get into it.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast. Gotta get it hype. Crypto is what we like, but this is not investment or financial advice. Gotta do your research, cause it's risky. We know it is. This show is educational and it's informative. Crypto's the future, really, it ain't no debate.
So not only do you go off and help build the first DEX on the Cardano ecosystem, you go off and build a programming language as well. And this one is revolved around Python. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
So I started first with something, and that's where the imperator comes from. Something that's imperative. And maybe imperative doesn't ring many bells for a lot of people, but essentially, let's say 99% of the programming languages that you see out in the wild are imperative. It's like Rust, JavaScript, Python, and all of that. And initially, I wanted to just started building my own language that is imperative and maybe that's more intuitive to understand. But eventually, I figured it would be great if we could go and use Python, because there's a lot of tooling around Python. There's a lot of people having worked with Python before, and Python is actually what imperator lang is going to be built on.
So in terms of a user coming into the ecosystem and learning this for the first time, what is the experience like to pick this up and start programming a smart contract on it?
I mean, naturally, you would have to first understand a bit how the UTXO system works on Cardano. That's unfortunately that's a given. Like, you need to understand. Okay, I'm sending transaction outputs to someone, and now I'm writing a contract that verifies I can spend some transaction output. But at that point, do you want a demo? Should I just show it to you? I mean,
if you got a demo, let's go through that. It makes things so much easier.
So, okay, it's called PySCC. This is my internal name. It's Python Smart Contracts for Cardano. And what you would do is you just download this repository, then you have it here, and then, well, let's write a contract called sample.py. This is like the normal workflow of writing something in Python, and there's some, copy this over, some preamble. It's raw, but it's workable right now. And now we write our main function for the contract. So imagine, you have to just imagine, okay, we are now at the blockchain, and someone wants to spend money from somewhere. So we're now writing a contract, and that just says either, yes, it's fine, you can spend this money, or no, it's not fine, you can spend this money. And there's some input to this contract. I don't know, I haven't thought of something specific. Maybe I'm giving two numbers, and that person can spend the money if the two numbers sum to 42. Okay, that's very simple. So you say, okay, if n plus m, Python, n plus m equals 42, then we say, yes, it's fine. Otherwise, let me reformulate this. So fine equals false. And then we say fine equals yes. And then we say, okay, return fine. And that's it. And you can then say, okay, how would this actually work? You call pycc evaluate sample for, I don't know, 1 and 2. Oops. And it says, okay, no, this is not fine. Do you have two numbers for me, Peter, that sum up to 42? Be 40 and 2. Then you would say, okay, just compile it. And what you would normally get out, so if you, for example, say, you compile the Hello World program, you get out, that just prints Hello World, and then you get out Pluto's bytecode, and that one is the contract. That one is the address where you send money to and where the money is spent from.
So what did that just output there? The Plutus output?
Yeah, this is some really convoluted stuff.
Oh yeah,
and essentially
it's really hard to read.
It's the assembly of Plutus. So it's like really basic functional programming code. And what Imperator does for you is it compiles this nice Python program. It transforms it into something that the blockchain can understand. And this is this a bit more convoluted stuff that's harder to understand.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, before setting this all up and writing out in Plutus, like my journey into experimenting into writing Plutus smart contracts was I had to set up the whole development environment around it, such as a Nix environment, Cabal, and everything else that all the dependencies for the environment. And that just completely threw me off. That was a terrible introduction and developer experience for myself, like trying to learn smart contracts. In setting this up in Python, do you have to go through any of that to set up your environments, or is this a lot more simplified? Like from a language point of view, from what you're showing me in demoing, that's really easy to read and really easy to understand. But from an environment setup, is there much to it?
That's a very good point. So what I'm aiming for is to to make this compatible with a library called pycardano, and they are essentially building a lot of, or making a lot of transaction building available in Python itself. What you will be able to do is you can create some transactions with that library. You just download the library. You might need to connect it to some node or to Blockfrost, either works. And then you can build transactions just in Python. You just download Python and connect it to some provider of Ogmios or Blockfrost or a node. You can build the transactions in Python, and then you can even debug the transaction in Python and compile. I mean, the compilation also works without the Cardano node. We don't have to download the whole or compile all the stuff that you currently need for Plutus. It compiles to this. This you use Aiken, which is a binary. You just download it. It's a program. Compiles it through. Probably you can just bundle this, and then it's like one thing you download, and it compiles for you down to the address where you should send money to.
Right. Okay. I did have a look at the GitHub repository, and I saw some references to Aiken in there as well. So I was wondering how that was all involved. Okay. So
the whole pipeline is you write code, then it transpiles into this stuff that you saw on the command line. That's like all the parentheses, and that one is compiled into Plutus bytecode. It's called, and that's essentially just a different representation of this code, and then you send that to the chain.
Now, I haven't gotten to this point of actually deploying code. What is the deployment process for getting a smart contract on chain?
I think there's a bit misunderstanding there because, for example, in Ethereum, you deploy the smart contract, you have to upload it somehow. But in Cardano, it's actually the other way around. The contract is by definition at the point, like you write a contract and then you more or less hash it. That gives you an address, and that's already your contract. You can already start sending stuff there. Yep. And getting it to work is just another transaction where you say, okay, I want to spend money from there, and you attach the contract that you built here.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe there's a bit of educational need there as well. Like, how do you deploy it? It's kind of the wrong question. You don't need to deploy it. You just need to say, okay, I compiled it, and now I want to use it.
Yep. Just start using. Okay, that really makes sense to me. So thank you for sharing that. Now, in regards to people wanting to use this in Imperator Lang. Is there documentation or anything about get started guides or anything around that so that people can pick this up and start playing around with it?
Currently, there's only very rudimentary documentation because, as you've seen, it's a bit in a prototype phase. I have applied two times now for funding through Catalyst, and I'm looking for sponsors that would like to help me. Maybe some devs that are interested in bringing this, in refining this to the final steps, where people can actually start playing around with it. For now, it's in a phase where it's like, it's a minimal viable product. It can work, but it's not ready for production, and some things it has rough edges and this kind of stuff. So I don't want to make the impression to users that it should be that everything is working when actually there's still a few things that we need to fine tune.
And you mentioned there about funding to get this off the ground and working, and you tried to apply but weren't successful in 2 funds. Is that right?
Yeah, I applied in Catalyst, Project Catalyst, and there's a few other projects as well, and none of them unfortunately got funded, which is, I think, very unfortunate for the ecosystem. Because, as you said earlier, it's like a general barrier that there's only one language and that it's a bit hard to grasp. So,
human readable code, I think, is really important. And, just reading through that Python script just made sense to me. So anyone else that is very used to Python, and I know there's millions of Python developers around the world, being able to get that up and running and starting writing smart contracts in a new ecosystem that's growing and developing is very exciting. Now, Fund 10 for Project Catalyst should be coming soon. We don't have an exact date for it yet, but fingers crossed that your proposal that will go through there will get some eyeballs, some funding at least, so that you can get this to a good stable state and have another alternative smart contract language on the Cardano ecosystem. And it's really cool. We're getting so many of them at the moment. So we've got Aiken, PluTS, Helios, and all these other ecosystem and infrastructure ones as well, and now yours as well. So it's really cool that this is coming about, so that it gives developers different entry points and more options in regards to how they can code smart contracts on Cardano.
And I think what's worth to note here is that these are not exclusive projects. It's not like, okay, the programming language for Cardano smart contracts is going to this or this, but you can choose either. They're going to be compatible. And for example, I am also working closely with Aiken because we are sharing tool chains, and this makes the whole process for people that want to start and people that want to use the things easier. And another misconception might be, this is just a contract. The contract, with this, you could write it in Python as well and make it readable. And the whole other stuff, as I said, there is pycardano already. That one is production ready and fine. And you can build normal transactions. You can interact with existing smart contracts. Those might be written in Aiken. Those might be written in PluTS, whatever.
Right, yeah.
You can have that interaction in any language. And that's, I think, a really strong point that might be overlooked as well.
Yeah, it's not just the smart contracts, it's all the off-chain code and everything around it that interacts with the smart contracts. Okay, now you having so much experience in the Cardano ecosystem as it is, for anyone that's wanting to start off building and writing smart contracts or even more involved, like a full dApp, what advice can you give them to get started?
Maybe reach out into the community to find out what tools exist. Like, don't just look at one place and say, okay, these people provide these tools and then now I have to build against them. No, there's so much different stuff. There are so many different teams working on different access points, entry points. They might be exclusive, they might not be exclusive. So first, get a hold of what's actually possible. Get hold of the different, say, approach to transactions in Cardano, because that's an important thing to understand. And then how can you use the tools to make your idea on this different system, and think differently. Try not to port what exists to what is here, but think, what new options does this system give you?
Thank you so much for that advice. I'm sure someone listening in on this will get a slightly better starting point. I think
I hope so.
Because I think because a lot of these tools are so brand new as well, and a lot of them are just hidden on GitHub. It's hard to search for or whatever, and
for me too. Every week I discover a new project where it's like, wow, if I had just known this maybe 6 months before, some things would have been so much easier. But I think there is the strength of the community, because people are willing to help out and to give pointers and to point it in different directions. So yeah. Okay.
Now, where are those points of contact in the community? For specifically for developers, so that you can talk to other devs to chat about these tools and get advice from other devs.
So usually for me, it's like a gradual experience. I discover one tool, then they maybe have a Discord channel or some dev, and then you contact them, and you get more pointers to other people, and you're kind of building up. There's for example, the Aiken. There's a whole area around that Discord channel, Discord server that's very active. There's a Cardano technical Discord server that's super active. There's a lot of stuff going on Reddit. Twitter, if you want to keep up with the really new stuff. And these are maybe some pointers. I think Tab Tools is starting to also point to different entry points into Cardano and tools.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, I'll grab a couple of links from you for all those resources and points of entry as well. I think a lot of people find it quite useful. Is there any points of entry for I find it really hard to pronounce Imperator Lang.
There is my GitHub repository. Good point. Maybe I should set up a dedicated Discord channel around it. Currently, I'm also hanging around the Aiken Discord server because they're kind of closely related right now. You can always, if you're listening into this and you want to get involved, you can always just drop me a message. If I see a lot of people being interested, I might just join up a server or something. That's a great idea.
Okay, brilliant. I think you might have to. Okay, Niels, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast episode and sharing everything around what you're doing and with this whole new programming language as well. It's pretty cool. I'd really love to see these projects get funded and get a really good boost in the Cardano ecosystem and beyond. Like having these options for developers, I think, is key for developer adoption in the ecosystem.
And maybe if I can just do some more advertisement, it's not a completely new programming language. It's Python. You can have, you see I'm working in the IDE. There are tools dedicated to Python. You have all the type hints. There are even like formal verifiers specialized for Python. And those can now be translated to Cardano smart contracts. So I think if we don't only focus on, okay, let's build something new, but maybe also how can we combine the new and the old to leverage the power of all the tooling that we have available already. That's my vision there.
Now, all the links for you, resources on our website, learncardano.io. Look in the links down below on the audio podcast. If you're listening to it, you'll see a link there as well. And you'll be able to get to all the links and resources, all the OpShin Pioneer program and everything that you need to get started in writing smart contracts with Python. Very exciting. Now, there are some other alternative languages as well, such as Aiken and Plutus and Helios. Lots of options coming out, all different type of flavors and different ways of writing smart contracts as opposed to just writing in Plutus. So lots of options there for developers. Now, if you really enjoyed this content, please consider giving me that thumbs up, click subscribe, click on that notification bell. You hear a lot more Cardano related content. We also have merch down below as well. And you can also become a member here on YouTube and you get little perks. I'll be working on those very, very soon. But until then, I'll see you in the next video.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast. Gotta get it hype. Crypto is what we like, but this is not investment or financial advice. Gotta do your research, cause it's risky. We know it is. This show is educational and it's informative. Crypto's the future, really, it ain't no debating.